perpetrated upon a person of African descent, whether it was, it's something that is perpetrated upon a human period. And I think one of the things that was shocking to both you and I and many other people who were with us when we went to the detention center is to see how people had been separated from their families and for their loved ones who had committed no crime at all. All they did was present themselves at our border with the hope that they would be able to apply in the process and to be given the privilege to come in to escape some of the hideous crimes that were perpetrated upon them in their homeland. That was a great injustice, at least in our minds when we saw it, and we were touched by it, and we were moved to act upon it to the best of our ability. Of course, these recent events are events that that has mobilized the entire world, if you will, and certainly the faith community about being able to see things that have been perpetrated obviously in our face that we can see, but for people of color, it was not different from what we had been doing and dealing with over the last 400 years.
Thank you. And I think what you said at the end has really been, it's very powerful, and really just, personally for me is really what the moment of soul searching is. Obviously, the recent events, something has changed, and hopefully, the momentum can be maintained. But for myself, I guess this is a question I ask. I don't really have a very good answer to it. Is why did it take this sort of public execution of a man on the street for many of us, and myself included, to really get exercised about this? I'm just putting that out there as a very honest reflection of my own feeling, how I'm feeling, and I hope to. In Hebrew, we use the word teshuvah, which is to repent. I hope to do my own soul searching and make amends for that on my own. And I'm grateful for your leadership and your partnership, and I hope this conversation is an opportunity for people who are on the call and others to get involved in meaningful change opportunities beyond the conversation.
Rabbi, it's interesting how technology helped change how we approach some of the difficulties of our day. During the civil rights movement, what happened and what occurred, people were able to see because of the advent of the television. When television cameras allowed people to see dogs, water holes, and things of that nature perpetrated upon humans, it outraged many good persons who were sitting on their sofa and finally saying, look, enough is enough. I think what has happened in these recent events is the advent of, the cellular phones with cameras on them, ability to record, and is instantly able to shine a light on some of the crimes that are perpetrated that otherwise people would have gotten away with. People would not have been able to see it. And you talk about reality television. What we saw just a few weeks ago with this young man, George, was reality television. We were able to see with our own eyes life being squeezed out of a man right there on camera, on television, and it was undisputable. And I think that outraged people across this country and even across the globe.
It certainly did. And while technology has its challenges, in this case, hopefully it could be the engine of change. So thank you again for your insights. I'm going to now turn it over to Rebecca to begin the panel conversation. Thank you again, Rebecca, for agreeing to do this and for doing some of the work ahead of time to learn about the panelists and to think about the best way to do this. Just one more reminder, everyone, if you'd like to ask a question when that time comes, please send a message using the chat function or the raise hand function. Send the message to Rebecca, who is the co-host. Rebecca, open. Okay, thank you so much, Rebecca.
Sure, thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this. I'm really eager to hear people's questions. Before I turn to some of the panelists who we're really excited to hear from, just to sort of partner with Pastor Clemons' response to the question that Rabbi Galman just asked, there's a gentleman, I think it's Mr. Caviel, do I have your name correctly, who asked to comment on that last question that Rabbi Galman asked about why at this particular time is there so much momentum from the incident about the murder of George Floyd. And so I figured this would be a good time to return to unmute you, sir, if you wanted to take up on that comment. Can you unmute yourself? No. Ha! Let me see. Can I help unmute you?
No, here we go.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
So for me personally, I have not watched the movie. I can't bring myself to watch the movie. But one of the things is that just hearing it, having been as a kid growing up in Pasadena when the KKK had a headquarters downtown in Pasadena, not being able to play outside, it resonated with a lot of people who's ever been discriminated against, who's been done wrong by police or whatever the case may be. And we seen ourselves in this happen. I know I did. I saw myself, and it made me think that it made me readdress people's comments as like, look at these protesters, look at these looters, look at everything's going on, and I don't agree with a lot of stuff that's taken place with the looting and the burning. I would be strongly hurt if that was my business that was happening. But I tell everybody this: if this saves one person's life, if this causes just a second of change throughout any of these communities, what is causing now, where people are, we need to do something, because we bring up all this diversion of saying, well, black people kill black people, or these people kill people, and for me, it resonates deeply, and I know any Jewish person would know that this would resonate deeply, is when the Jewish people say, never again. And that's the attitude that we as mankind, when we talk about this and when we deal with this, it's not it's gonna pass this time and it's gonna pass next time. You look at how many people have died relentlessly like this throughout any ages, any race and civilization, and we forget these people's names. We forget the guy's name in New York. We forget the guy's name in New Jersey. And we cannot forget people's names. We cannot forget the cause or what happened. And for me, that's where I like that.
Thank you so much. I think that's very helpful for us to hear both your personal experience as a young person in Pasadena and in terms of how it continues to have effect. While you were speaking, I received a number of comments that are around a similar area, and maybe some of the panelists, maybe Jasmine or Roosevelt, you could sort of comment to these from your different perspectives in terms of, you know, where you've come from. I think a number of people listening find themselves curious about what they can do. A number of people are commenting, you know, we hear a lot, at least now, about the term, how do you become an ally? Or what can you do as an individual? And, you know, I certainly think of Judaism as something that is a very active expression of faith. And so I think a number of us are thinking, given everything that we're seeing and reading, what you might, not that you're supposed to have the answers, but just in terms of your experiences, you know, what does an ally feel like, or what thoughts might you have toward that, for anyone who wants to take that question?
I can take it.
Thank you.
So one, I actually have listed, this is a question that comes up often. One of the major things that I see as becoming an ally, as been worded, is versus showing sympathy, show empathy. Listen with a purpose instead of listening to respond. And consider the other stance. Take in consideration, not necessarily put yourselves in their shoes, but that's going back to showing empathy as well. Yeah, showing empathy, listen with purpose, and consider the other one's stance.
Mm-hmm. You found that hard to come by?
Yes, it can be, because people do have a hard time separating empathy and sympathy, even in the sense that I'm still learning, still researching, still reading. That's all that you can do to be able to form your own opinion versus hearing everything else. Form your own first. Read. One of the first books that I've read was The Soul of Black Folks by W.B. Du Bois. That's one of the first readings that I had to do in college, and that really taught me a lot in putting myself in various stances on things that I can apply to today.
Thank you.
I think we must all approach this, particularly as people of faith. We must approach this, you know, from, in my standpoint, from a point of view of what would God have us to do? What would our Creator have us to do? And what is our response to Him? You know, if we focus ourselves primarily on what happened with the crimes that's being perpetrated upon African Americans, then we'll miss what is being perpetrated upon our Hispanic sisters and brothers that present themselves at the border. We'll miss the injustices that are perpetrated upon poor white folk who suffer the same hideous crimes that is being perpetrated upon them, not by police showing up and arresting them, but misinformation, being ill-treated, and no respect upon them. And also we'll miss the need to deal with the perpetrator, who must be hurting to do what it is that they are doing. It had to be something uniquely and grossly wrong with a Hitler. I mean, who can bring himself or herself to perpetrate those kind of crimes and hideous crimes upon another human being if they don't have any relationship? It must be that they have no relationship with our God, no sensitivity to what his will and what his purpose is. And so I think it's important that we don't get bogged down trying to break the yellow leaf off the shoot, as opposed to getting to the root problem and the root cause. And the root problem and the root cause is that there's a flaw in humanity ever since we violated God's request and requirement in the garden. Sin entered into the world, and that sin manifests itself in so many different kinds of ways. And so I think for people of faith, we must approach this as trying to deal with light against darkness, right against wrong, truth against myth. And for people of faith, we stand with light, we stand with truth, we stand with what is required of us to meet our Maker.
Thank you. This is a sometimes sort of tricky question, but I think for some people it gets in the way of the kind of collaboration between the Jewish community and the Black community. And I take your point that you're not only speaking about that kind of those two communities collaborating, but it's a little bit of what's represented here now, sometimes gets in the way of those communities always working closely together. And some of it has to do with that there has been sometimes anti-Semitism expressed from parts of the Black community, and I think there's also sometimes been racism within the Jewish community, and I think both need to own each of those. Some people on this call have expressed questions about what you could say about some of the anti-Semitism that has sometimes been spoken either by certain notable leaders or even in early phases of the Black Lives Matter movement. I was wondering if that was something that you could speak about?
Yeah, that drives my point home. I mean, is that if you get caught up in the institution that is driving the Reformation, as opposed to the purpose and the reason for Reformation. Some people want Reformation, and Reformation becomes worse. The Reform movement is worse than the original movement. And so I don't want to be in support of Reformation just for the point of Reformation. I think our point is, and my point is that there's a responsibility and an obligation that has been given to us by our Creator. Mm-hmm. And wherever darkness is, and I'm repeating myself, light is obligated to shine. Mm-hmm. And that does, I mean, if that's another Black person perpetrating a crime upon another Black person, that's just as wrong as a Black person perpetrating a crime upon a white, and a white is perpetrating upon a Black. It's, one of my experiences one time, without being long-winded, I was in Ghana. I had been invited there by the government to come and to fight upon an issue. Those of you who have been to that part of Africa realize that it is primarily a country of dark-skinned people, as opposed to somewhere like South Africa. And for those who romanticize the idea of, as an African, I'm going back to Africa and I want to be part of this. And then what I saw there is that I saw people with dark skin, people with hair like mine, perpetrating the same kind of hideous crimes upon one another. And I asked the question, I said, why is it that you all don't deal with that guy? What did he do? And my host said, he is from, and named the name of the tribe. And so I was trying to figure out what what is it about humans that make humans do what humans do? And it's a flaw in us.
We just lost your video.
Yeah, we lost your video, but you were saying it's a flaw in us. Mm-hmm.
It's a flaw in humans as a whole. Did you get me back?
We don't have your video yet, but we do hear you.
Yeah, I think it's a flaw in humans as a whole. I mean, it is that, you know, unless we deal with our issues as humans to become what we ought to be, it doesn't matter whether it's white against black. Mm-hmm. It's a sin problem, if you understand what I mean.
Yes, thank you. I was going to take a question to Roosevelt Wilson, who, as you saw in the bio, currently is the head of a school. As we were speaking before, Roosevelt, you were letting us know that you also were in the Marine Corps. So you kind of come from, worked in sort of two major kind of institutions, if you will, the military and also in education. I was wondering if you could share with us any thoughts that you have from these vantage points where you've been and currently are about kind of challenges and opportunities that you see, and might not have to do with the military. It could just be speaking from kind of the current work and in which you're engaged. I'd be just curious what you see as an educator and the population that you work with. You're on mute.
He can't unmute himself.
Oh,
There you go.
There you go.
It's there.
thank you.
Yeah, let me first start by saying I think one of the things I try to avoid in speaking for any group, except, you know, being a Christian where the Bible leads me to speak, that's what I represent. So, and you know, obviously, in terms of seeing what's happening, you formulate some opinion and you look to the scriptures for certain answers. And I'll give you a story about the time I was teaching third grade. So 23 years in the Marine Corps, and I started teaching first grade, and that was quite an experience, quite a jump. But a few years later,
which was hard, but I'm not going to.
So I'm teaching third grade, and we're going through U.S. history, and of course it's a kind of an overview, but the kids recognize that there was all this war turmoil, that in their little minds they couldn't explain it. And so one little girl, I'll never forget, she said, "Mr. Wilson, why couldn't people get along?" And so I looked at her and I said, "Do you all get along in class?" She said, "No, we don't." I said, "Well, that's your reason. That's why folks didn't get along, whatever that reason is that you're giving." And so essentially, I think it's like Pastor said, we take a very, I think, narrow look, because we're not the only people who's been on earth and who's faced conflicts and horrors of injustice. It started with Cain and Abel. And so, you know, the scripture tells us that there's sin in the heart. It's not, Jesus said, it's not what goes in a man that makes him unclean. It's the issues of the heart. And so I believe that the only solution has been what has transpired with me. I've perpetrated crime. I've done things to people that I shouldn't have done. Lived a horrible life until the Lord Jesus saved me. And there's a different life. And my wife and I, you know, we talk about that often because we both lived a life outside of our faith. And so after that, then the changes started to occur from the inside out, so that we started to see people differently. I think, you know, when you start talking about a term like racism, to be specific, it's a very narrow look, because it's really sin
that's the broader look, because some of the same things that we're talking about that's taking place outside of a particular race by another race of people often happens within the race. And so, that's how I've been able to guide my prayers and have conversation with folks, and just try to help them see what the God of the universe says the solution is.
Mm-hmm. And I notice in your bio, you speak about transforming students from varied backgrounds. I assume that the matter that you just spoke about is key to that kind of transformation. Do you want to speak a little bit?
We bring our kids are a diverse group of kids. We have Chinese kids, various Latino ethnicities. We have Black kids. We have white kids. We have Chinese teachers. We have Hispanic teachers. We have Black teachers. We have white teachers. So we consider it a small kingdom of God. But what we try to help the kids understand through modeling is that the color of our skin is the only difference often that there is. Internally, we all seek love. We all seek acceptance. We want to do good if that's modeled. So we feel like bringing kids into this environment and obviously giving them access to the scriptures. The kids do a lot of memorization. Not all of our kids are Christians, but that's not a requirement. And so we try to help the kids understand that they each have a place, have a voice, and much of it begins with supporting one another.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to return to what a number of people were asking in terms of perhaps how people from this community or any community can become, more engaged through personal acts or communal acts of, helping in some way. And I know, and this may be an opportunity for Joel to help kind of share his experience, or maybe Pastor Clemons, you'd like to introduce this. But I was really intrigued by the fact that your church has kind of two, I think they're kind of two organizations within it, both the Center for Urban Transformation and the Fifth Ward Community Redevelopment Corporation, that are kind of invested in sort of communal growth and development, and the Center for Urban Transformation particularly. So I was wondering either if Joel or Pastor Clemons, either you wanted to kind of speak to those collaborations and how those are designed to bring about kind of cross-communal collaboration.
I'll just very quickly introduce Joel and let him speak. He's of age. I'll let him speak for himself. I don't
Only
know,
because
Joel,
I've been baptized by Harvey. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that Joel, I think it was what, 5 or 6 years ago. I spoke at Joel's synagogue. Rabbi Steve Gross invited me to come and speak at their synagogue, and I was speaking. And after we got through speaking, Joel came up and introduced himself to me and asked the question that you're asking right now. How can I help you to do some of the things that you're doing? And so we set up an appointment for him to come out to the office, and we just start talking about what he's doing, what I'm doing, and figured out a way, how can we do a collaboration? And with that, I'll let Joel talk, because I haven't been the same since I got involved with him. He just messed my life up so bad.
And vice versa. So Harvey and I have become really good friends. I admire Harvey. I look at Harvey as not only a friend, but a mentor with all this injustice out there. But rather than all the rhetoric about it, let me explain to you what Harvey and I have done. For years in the beginning, my law firm started representing all the youth in the Fifth Ward for free. They would get in trouble with the law. They would get arrested because they were Black. There's so many reasons that there was so much injustice. And we go to court and we had a philosophy. Nobody would ever plead guilty to anything. If the DA's office wanted to go after these kids, they're going to have to go to trial. So Harvey and I were going to fight the system ourselves, one by each kid. And we were successful. But what Harvey and I thought about one day is, all we're doing is helping out individual lives. Let's help out the community in the whole Fifth Ward. Let's try to do a transformation of injustice in the Fifth Ward. So we created this entity called the Center for Urban Transformation. And the objective was to meet with the district attorney's office, meet with law enforcement, and try to get everybody to collaborate to prevent the injustice from occurring. Rather than talk about it, we wanted to achieve a result in the community itself. And so we had countless meetings with the DA, countless meetings with law enforcement, up to the chiefs of police, of HISD, HPD, the sheriff's department. We had a great effort, and we came to a resolution ultimately where the DA's office would no longer charge the youthful offenders in the Fifth Ward with any type of crime. What they would do is divert it to our juvenile justice reform system that was embedded into the Fifth Ward, so that we would take care of the problems of the youth rather than having it done in downtown Houston. And at the same time, we would make sure that they got the counseling they needed and the mentorship that they needed, because so many of these kids don't have any parents. In all the years I've been representing children in the Fifth Ward, I've never met a parent. I only meet grandmothers and grandfathers. And there's a reason for that. These kids have never had the development that most of the audience has had growing up. And we, at this point, if you're a young kid in the Fifth Ward, what you'll get diverted to our program, and you won't have a criminal record, you'll have a second chance at life. We'll hopefully reform your issues, and you'll be able to participate like any Jewish person in your congregation, with an opportunity to go to college and to have a successful, productive life, not a life that revolves around going to jail and in and out of jail in that process. And so far, the system is working very well for us. We've gotten very good results in the process, but we need obviously bigger and greater efforts beyond the Fifth Ward. And we've gotten good national recognition. And Harvey and I continue to plow away through this. And the disappointing thing for me, and Harvey will get mad at me for this, but the disappointing thing for me is when I watch on the TV in the last couple of weeks, all the politicians coming out and saying we need to do this and do that. Harvey and I have had very little help from politicians doing what we wanted to do. They weren't interested. And we had to just do this ourselves. And they would buy in if they liked it, but there was very little progress. So when I hear on TV that we're going to have all this new momentum and they're going to have this new legislation, until I see it, I don't buy it. The only thing I buy is individuals going into the community and making the changes themselves.
Right, that's very powerful. Yeah, I read a very exciting article about this in Forbes. So you are gaining some.
And it's all, and I give so much credit to my partner, Harvey. Harvey has the leadership in the Fifth Ward to get this done. Sure, I go to court and do the stuff for the kids, but it's Harvey's leadership that is really the powerful thing and the powerful message for everybody.
So I
don't know why I feel like I'm being set up. I mean, some kind of way I'm being, Rabbi, I think I'm being set up. So I'm probably gonna have to come to you for some counseling next week. But I mean, here's what I think, because oftentimes what happens is that we get on calls like this and we spend all of our time on the call talking and about the problem and very little time talking about the solution. And to me, that's a waste of time. The bulk of our time ought to be spent on how are we going to make a difference. And I think each person have to become a committee of one. You have to fight injustice from whatever perch you're on. All of us have illness around us. And if you're sitting at the dinner table and it's your spouse, it's your children, it's your siblings, and they are spouting poison, you must at that table become a force for right at that table. Because if you can't do it around that table, then you won't be able to do it anywhere else. Amen. And so we must become that force to fight it right at our little sector. Is that, Daddy, that's not right. Mama, that's not right. You're my brother, but that's not the correct way of thinking. And when they argue their point of view about, well, it's because of the Jews or this, or it's because Black lives this, and then what we must say there, but what does the Holy Text say? What is our commitment to our Creator? And what does that text say? Because if we can't argue from the point of view of what the text say, what the Torah say, what scriptures say, if we cannot argue from that point of view, we will never win. It has to go back to our Creator and our relationship with our Creator. Obviously, it expands beyond those conversations, but it must start at that. It must start at that place, and then as we move out, we begin to fight the injustices that wherever we found it. Job was frustrated and moved, not because of my exercise in grandiloquence. He was moved because what he was seeing in the courtroom. He was in the courtroom, and when he was feeling helpless in the courtroom because he was seeing young kids, and it didn't matter whether they were Black, they were white, they were poor, they were Black, they were Hispanic, who did not have the money to pay for legal representation. They were being assigned a court-appointed attorney. The court-appointed attorney was just taking a paycheck and essentially pleading those cases out. Those guys wanted so much to be out of jail, and they didn't have money to place their bond, so they would take whatever would come to them that would get them out on the street. But they had a jacket on them. Now, wherever you go, if you try to go work for the FBI, you try to go work for a job where there's a background search on you, you're now ineligible because you got a record. And so Joe was already looking for a way to fight those kinds of injustices that he saw in the courtroom. It's just so happened that I stumbled up on him, and we collaborated our effort to say, how do we parlay what we're trying to do to deal with this issue? But we also recognize if we only dealt with getting the person record expunged or keeping the person from getting a record, we didn't deal with why the person was shoplifting in the store in the first place, or why the person was fighting in the first place. So we knew we had to dig deeper by trying to say, what caused this person to do this? And when you dig a little deeper, then you were able to realize that, I'm living with my uncle, I'm living with my grandparents. We didn't have food. We didn't have this. It was something else that occurred. So we realized to really solve the problem, we had to create some type of institution that we could provide wraparound services.
Yeah.
Is this because this person living in inadequate housing? Is it because this person does not have a nutritious meal? Is it because this person is suffering from mental health issues and not being treated? What is the root cause and the root problem? And then deal with that. And here's my final point on this is we oftentimes deal with the victim, but it's important to deal with the perpetrator. Because anybody who is so messed up that they would want to do harm to another human, they're hurting too. And so how do you deal with that? How do you bring victims and perpetrators together and work toward a spirit of reconciliation?
Wow.
Jazz, did I get that right?
You did. You getting there. You got it. You got it.
Do you want to add to it, Jasmine? Because that's a lot.
Yeah, I think he covered it. I'll wait for the next one.
Because I know, I'm so glad this is being recorded because I am on replay myself. So I'd be happy for anyone to add to it for sure. Because right now I'm just going to be re-listening a great deal. I am thankful for that. So 2 points that I want to highlight from that, and then one that I want to branch off of. So I'm really grateful for you highlighting the individual responsibility that we all have. I know that, you know, as sort of Jews, you know, we spend a lot of time around tables where a lot of people gathering. We take these long meals over, you know, our Sabbath, and there are a lot of different points of view exchanged. And I think we all have had opportunities where things have been said where we absolutely need to jump in and indicate what is not appropriate or what needs to be said differently. And so I really share and kind of own, you know, that reminder in all kinds of situations. But that one comes to mind about really sort of being righteous and representative, you know, wherever. And then also the bridge from the individual to the communal. And I want to note for you that as you were talking, as Joel was speaking, and then as you were speaking about the kind of wider umbrella organization that you have developed to work to kind of help and heal in the Fifth Ward, a number of people were picking up on your comment that this conversation should not just be about problems, but about solutions. A number of people have chatted in or texted Rabbi Gelman, how can we help? Because there are a number of people here who certainly want to be involved and would like to see themselves as engaged with this process. And so I do hope we can have a few minutes for that conversation. You spoke of a number of areas, either mentorship or mental health or food insecurity, or a number of areas. And, you know, I think those are opportunities for people to join in your effort in some way. So I think people would like to see themselves as having action come out of this. And then before we move to that, I did want to give Roosevelt an opportunity to follow up. I see that he had a comment to make on Pastor Clemons' remarks. Roosevelt, would you like to join in? I think you'll need to unmute, Rabbi.
Yeah,
can you unmute?
Yeah, I keep trying.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I think it's not you. I think it's us.
Yeah, I wanted to say, I mean, that is really a beautiful way to think about the issues that's taking place, because obviously people do things that they shouldn't do. And we've already talked about how there's that seed of sin in the heart, but there's ways of getting to people early. This is, you know, one of the reasons I wanted to be a part of kids' lives, is because when we get there early, we're able to help nurture a certain lifestyle that they can pattern and follow. And I tell you what, with you know, the dismantling in so many ways of a family structure, if there's not other structures coming in to shore that up, where, you know, it's perpetuated. Because think about, I mean, just the history of us, the history of man being on earth. There's never been a time really when I mean, the light of peace is very minimal as you look throughout our history, but there are all these wonderful, courageous, heroic deeds of others, helping other people. And that needs to be the constant stream, recognizing that you may not be able to change the heart, but you can change the pattern of people's activities if you jump in and show them a different way.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that comment, indeed. Let's see, there's a comment from Hannah.
I'll unmute Hannah Sasson.
Thank you.
As soon as I find her. Let's see, I'm just scrolling through. Okay.
There are many.
Okay, Hannah, you have to unmute yourself. Go ahead, Hannah.
I did. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can. Okay. So as an educator, I think that the part of solving the problem is education. When people will be, the little children, and sorry, I apologize that I don't remember the former names of the people that spoke before me, but they said, one of them said, so the one that deals with the children from early age, if the children will be in schools educated, and they will finish high school, and they'll get a degree, and they'll get a profession, and they'll get meaning in life, and they will be happy with themselves and satisfied, they will not go to hatred and racism and frustration and all these kind of things. They will go for hope and love and embrace everybody. And that's something very, very, very important, to give these children hope in their life and purpose. And when they don't have hope, people go to all this kind of behavior that we see in this kind of events or circumstances. Sorry, I apologize for my English. But that's something very, very important, I think. And when we give them hope, then we eliminate a lot from the problem.
I do believe in education, and I do believe in the idea of what Dr. Roosevelt Wilson said in terms of if children's lives are changed from 0 to 6, if you touch their lives from 0 to 6, you really have basically set the foundation of them for the rest of their life in terms of being able to learn. And so early childhood education is a must. It is mandatory if you want to have an effect, a positive effect on the life of a child of any color. The one area of caution about education is that for African Americans that of my generation, our parents and our grandparents who were just coming out of slavery, who were not allowed to get an education, not allowed to be able to go to school, they pushed to their children and their children's children is get an education, get an education, get an education, get an education. And many individuals of my generation.
Harvey, I can't help but just interrupt you for a second. It sounds like your parents and your grandparents were Jewish.
They may have been black Jews. I don't know. But I tell you what.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I couldn't.
No,
I couldn't.
They did. And here's one of the great frustrations. Here is the great frustration of that thinking, because they pushed it, they drove it home, and then people went on, they went to Harvard, they went to Yale, they went to Princeton. They went to, they got their bachelor's, they got their postgraduate, and what they could not do is with all of their PhDs and all of their education, they couldn't change the color of their skin.
Yeah.
And so education has its limits as to what it can do. And, you just become and that now you want to know frustration is to graduate at the top of your class from Harvard Law School and still after 10 years working at a major law firm and still can't be partner. Mm-hmm. And I have colleagues and friends who have that frustration. And if you want to know what violence is, you know what violence is? Violence is when something does not get what it think it deserves. Mm-hmm. If you try to put 10,000 pounds of pressure in a pipe that was designed to handle 5,000 pounds of pressure, it may handle it for a little while, but it won't be long before that pipe is going to explode. When you start to having people live in any country and they cannot get what they think they deserve when they played by the rules, you're going to have a violent reaction. And that's what I think we see acting out on our streets today and in our country around, is that people are saying, if I get pulled over on the side of the road and get pulled out of my car, not because I ran a red light, not because I violated the law, but just because of the color of my skin, and then when I make my protest, then I get shot and killed. That's an issue that has to do and will not be solved by education. It will only be solved is that when the heart of a human has been changed. And I think that comes only because one has a relationship with our Creator. We can debate about our faith traditions all we want to, about whether I'm Christian or Judaism or whatever it is. The reality is there's a Creator, and we're all trying to find our way. I am committed to Christianity because that's what I believe. If you are committed to Judaism, the idea is that God is big enough to be able to see the motive of the heart and change an individual because of their sincerity of wanting to have a relationship with Him. And I think that's where it must begin. It must begin. I cannot have a relationship with you if I don't have a relationship with my Creator. And I cannot have a relationship with my Creator if I don't have a relationship with you. That's a reality, is that I will never be all that I am meant to be until you become all that you have been meant to be. That's my sermon. And by the way, after I preach a sermon like that, usually I want to pass the offering plate.
Put something in it, and I gotta tell you, I'm not allowed to say that with my rabbi listening, I don't think, but I don't know.
I'll put something in it.
Seriously.
Rebecca, I want to follow up.
Yes.
Because I think we're coming towards the end. So I got a really interesting question on my chat, Reverend Clemons. And this goes to what you said, to what Roosevelt said, to what I've been teaching. Someone asked, how do we, as people of faith, refocus the public discussion on race from the faith perspective? It appears all subjects are open for public discussion except faith and God. And what I've heard tonight is you and Roosevelt, and in the sermon I sent out last Friday before the Sabbath, was also much about being created in the image of God and faith in God, and actually God's faith in us. So we're talking about it. But I have a question that's sort of burning inside me. It sounds like that you're suggesting that that's the only hope, meaning if people don't have a relationship with God, people are atheists, people are agnostic, then they're not going to get it. And I hope that's not true, because we have a lot of people in this country. First of all, we have a lot of good people in this country who are atheists and are agnostic and who get it. So what do you say to someone? I'll put you on the spot, Reverend Clemons. Sorry about that. Someone walks into your office and says, You know, I'm an atheist. I'm an agnostic. Tell me why I should care about issues of race and and racial justice. I'm searching for something to give people who may not connect the way we do.
Well, I think the text speaks, the Apostle Paul in our faith tradition says, wrote to the church at Corinth, that love covers a multitude of faults. I think it must start always with, because motive precedes action. Motive precedes action. That's the reason why when Joel goes to try to look at someone who has perpetrated a crime and the DA is looking at that case, the DA is going to start off with, who had the motive to kill the person? And then beyond that, of the people who had the motive to kill the person, who had access to it, to try to pull it down to this. So motive precedes action. And if motive precedes action, is that for people of faith, we know that any action that does not come with the motive of, I'm trying to please my God and I want to be right with my God, looking from not at the moment, but looking toward the eschaton. I mean, I think an eschatological approach makes us all better when we realize there is going to come a day that you are going to have to meet your creator, and you are going to want to be right with that creator. Now, not everybody will get that. Not everyone will agree with it. But my point is, I have the obligation and responsibility to love you through your weaknesses and through your faults, as my creator loves me through my weaknesses and my fault. You may not come along to what my beliefs are, but you don't have to for me to love you. I mean, I'm obligated to love you. Even if you are perpetrating and standing on my head. And I'm not trying to convert you from Judaism to Christianity, but I have to speak to you from my own perspective. And my own perspective is, while they were crucifying Jesus, he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing, which sets an example for all of us, is that, and that is a great difficulty. Now please do not do that to me, because I'm not sure I'm already there yet. But I mean, the goal is, is for me, is to love you and to respect you and to care for you, even when I think that there's more room for you to grow. And it becomes a blessing for me, because there's somebody who is more advanced than I am, that I'm going to need to love me until I can grow to where they are. We are our brother's keeper. And that's for better or for worse. And so, yes, there are individuals who are agnostic and atheists, and who do not buy into this God creation. That's going to have to be something that they will have to deal with when they meet whomever it is that is our creator. But in the meantime, as we live between two shaloms, is that we have an obligation and responsibility to love those individuals as we try to create a shalom in the in-between. Does that, Rabbi, does that make some sense?
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah. And by the way, before our time run out, I need to say to you, Rabbi Gelman, thank you so very much for this platform. Thank you for an opportunity to have these kind of dialogues. I think that this is, well, the evidence. Here's the evidence. if I had not been invited by Steve Gross to speak at the synagogue there, I never would have met Joel. And if, I've probably seen him on Channel 13, but being able to sit down and have a dialogue and a friendship, and it becomes more than the distant kind of knowledge of who he is, but to a real friendship, a real brotherhood. I mean, to get to know his lovely wife and his daughter and his grandchildren, and to be at the naming of his grandson, and I'd never seen anything like circumcision in the. I mean, y'all got some bloody behavior there, but anyway. But you see the importance of what I'm trying to say is to be able to share those experiences and to come to love one another and to be able to see the humanity and our relationship and the sharing that and to become teammates and partners. And I look forward, Rabbi, to you and I and Steve sitting down and breaking bread together and fellowshipping and talking and exploring in more ways how we can do good here in our community. So thank you for inviting us. Dr. Roosevelt, thank you so very much for coming. I know you're not always comfortable in having these kind of dialogues. Jazz, thank you for your bravery. And my partner in crime, Joel Androphy, thank you so very much. Joel, did I cover everything?
Yes. Let me just add one thing. The two favorite services that my wife enjoys over the year are going to Harvey's church during Easter and Christmas. We feel very comfortable in the church, Pleasant Hill, and we feel part of the congregation there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Reverend Clemons. And before I just say just a closing word, yes, I am. I look forward to partnering with you, Harvey, and to breaking bread and learning ways that I could help my congregants become more involved in this very important issue. And this, to me, is just the beginning, just the opportunity to see each other face to face and open up dialogue, which is going to lead to more than dialogue. I also want to thank Joel. I want to thank Roosevelt Wilson, Reverend Wilson, and Jasmine Payton also for joining. You have helped us grow as people, as children of God, and we're grateful, very grateful for that. When I called Reverend Clemons, I wasn't sure how this was going to go, but you said if Joel hadn't come to hear you, if you hadn't gone to Steve Gross's synagogue, or if I hadn't accepted Abby Kamen's invitation to go to the detention center, and you didn't accept that invitation, we would never have met. So God's working behind the scenes. So I just want to and I want to thank Rebecca Oberman very much for helping me create a much better vision of this program than what I had originally thought. So thank you very much, Rebecca. And Adriel also, who is Reverend Clemons' assistant. Thank you. I just want to just share with you, Reverend Clemons, and the other folks on the call, two things that I shared with my congregation last Friday. We don't have the chance to give a sermon or preach, but I write it down, I send it out. I check later. I see 2 people clicked it open. So I'm looking forward to getting back to live presentations where people have no choice but to listen to me. But until then, I'll share it with you. One thing I shared from last week's portion of the Bible, of the Torah that we read, was the story of the Meraglim, of the spies, the scouts that went to check out the land of Israel, and they came back with their report and they said, we can't do it. And people wonder, what was the sin? What did they do wrong? They just brought back an honest report. And one of the most beautiful explanations I saw was they had it all wrong. God already told them they're going to be able to conquer the land. Right. He just sent them to figure out the best way to launch the attack and to figure out what type of of fortresses they had. They
Right.
simply didn't believe, they didn't believe that they could accomplish something that God asked them to accomplish. And that was their sin. God doesn't ask us to do things which are impossible. That would be cruel. And tied into that is the notion, the belief that I have, that we are put on this planet at a specific time because our unique capabilities and capacities can make a difference at that time. And so it seems to me, I'm not a mystical person, but I'm feeling that this is a moment where all of us who are here living at this particular time, witnessing what we've witnessed, are being asked by God to do something. And the point is, we can do it. If we believe that God asks us to do it, then we can do it. Otherwise, we're not keeping faith. We're sort of sinning the way the scouts sin. And so I want to urge everyone on this call to really believe in themselves and to take agency in this, and to follow up with me, and I'm going to follow up with Pastor Clemons and Joel to find out ways that we could be allies, better allies. And that's the first point I wanted to close with. And the second is this really interesting and beautiful rabbinic story called the Midrash, where when God wanted to create the world and the angels were trying to talk him out of it. They said, they're just not going to do any good. They're going to hurt each other. They're no good. And the first group of angels tries to convince God not to create the world, and he destroys them. He's unhappy. And the second group tries to convince God not to create the world, and he destroys them too. And finally, a third group comes and says, look, we've made our point. We don't think this is a good idea, but you obviously have a different plan. And at the end, the rabbis quote the verse from Isaiah that says, even to old age, I will not change, and even to gray hair, I will still be patient. Meaning God has patience with us, even though we might not get it right the first time, might not get it right the second time, we are going to get it right. And my message to the community was, we have to prove the angels wrong and God right. And we have to have faith in ourselves that we could accomplish what we've been put here to accomplish. And I'm hopeful that with your help and guidance, and again, the responsibility is on our community to do our own learning and our own understanding of what's going on. But together, I'm hopeful that we can make a difference and towards racial justice, because I really believe we have to, and this is what God has put us here to do. And once we believe that, we have to believe that we can. So I look forward to more opportunities to work together.
Again, thank you, Rabbi Gelman. I look forward. May I thank Rebecca? She was made it very easy for us to come and to feel like we knew what was going on. So Rebecca, thank you. Adriel, thank you for working to set this up and to get me directed in the right direction, and I appreciate it. Rebecca, I asked Adriel if she would email to you a one-pager. I think we have a one-pager on the Center for Urban Transformation. It's our website. And if you
whole website. I've been all over your website, stalking it every which way.
Get it to
your everything. I've been on your Facebook. I am a full-time stalker, sir. So
share it with the congregation. Share with the congregation so that they too might want to visit our website, may want to help in whatever way they know how. They want to help me to keep Joel straight. I need help.
We can keep Joel straight, but we want to get involved, and so I look forward to helping. I'll share the information, absolutely, and we'll have those conversations, I hope.
Thank you. You guys have a great night.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Really appreciate it. Y'all be good. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Thank you.